kind of growing up in a very legalistic environment, like, if you if you do, if you do X, Y, and Z wrong, then that's deemed a sin, and like there's no grace for that. There's no compassion for that at all. Heavy pressure to not screw up in your life will also, that same energy then came, or that same perspective then shifted into business as well. So you can't screw up in business. And so then you would put a lot of pressure on yourself to be the perfect Christian. And then that you would also, it was the same, almost, believe it or not, it was just like kind of the same narrative or the same mindset of put all this pressure to close a sale. And that was very similar to, I must convince you that I'm a good person, and I also must convince you that you need to work with me for X, Y, and Z reasons. And it was all very, very, very similar, and took me a long time to realize that where it was really coming from, so.
Wow. I'm like, somebody's listening right now and they're just going, hold on, that hits way too close to home. Like that, I can tell, like, I feel that somebody right now is going, wait a second, that makes total sense to me. So, that idea of having to prove that you're a good person, okay, that idea of having to prove that you're a good person is this idea of like you have to be good to get into heaven. Like good people get into heaven. That's actually not what we're told. And so it's not that I personally believe like the full gospel does explain the consequence of sin and grace and redemption. And at the same time, that ought to lead to transformation where you are a person whose life is characterized by compassion, by your gifts used to the best of your ability and as God has given them to you and generously and all of those things. So, the good works overflow from that. But this idea that comes from a religious spirit that is the legalistic mentality that if you fall outside this line of rules, you are outside of the line or outside of the will of God, and the pressure that puts on people, and how many people walk away from God because of that, because they don't have understanding of His grace and mercy and the character of who He is. They only have understanding of sin and consequence, and both are important. I once heard it's like two legs, to fully be able to run as we're made to run, you have to have two legs, otherwise you just stand there. And so it's like it's important to have both sin and consequence and grace and mercy, and have both legs, so you can fully live, walk, run, do the things that we're made to do. As you're thinking about maybe what somebody who's grown up in the maybe context that you've grown up with, where they've experienced a lot of the legalism. And I'm not suggesting that this is 100% your experience, but just out of the words that you were using, that there's been legalism in their life, that they've viewed God as a God who they need to prove something to. Um, what would you say to them? Like, what would be the most empowering thing that you've had revelation in?
I think for me, and it's not necessarily for everyone that has gone through a um has a legalistic background, but for me the biggest thing was, that God, that I'm accepted, because I just couldn't in my head make sense that God accepted me for the way I was created. For some reason, I just thought I was created, that when God made a like that God had made a mistake on me, and that I just needed to try a little harder, and I just needed to work a little more. And there's just no possible way that I was right here, this time, this place. He could accept and love me for where I'm at. And I think once I got to that revelation that he accepted me and loved me for where I'm at, then I could start to feel a little more safer with him, because I never felt safe with him. And and it's been a journey to get to a place of what does it look like to be alone with your creator and feel safe. And because that I can journal and be so honest, and as the words are coming out, and there's parts of me that are like, oh gosh, I can't believe I even had that within me, or I can't believe I even thought that thought. Just the fact that he already knows and he already accepts, um, and that there is grace for that. So that's what I would say. That's the start.